Hi guys, it's me again. So what do you think? What's in those letters? Who are they coming from? I know if any of you guys has ever seen the movies, which I'm sure you guys have, you guys know what was said. Um, I know I've seen the movies, but I don't remember exactly. So I'm looking forward to it. I can infer. Infer means to based on my own history, my own upbringings and beliefs, I can make an assumption of what's going on. Like I could think that there's letters from um, Hogwarts stating that he is should be going to Hogwarts for school. And it's just stuff that's based on my knowledge of the story so far, of what I've already read. I could assume that that's what's going to happen. And obviously, there's a lot of magic going on, which makes it fun and interesting. Um, this next chapter, I'm hoping it'll tell us. But it left out pretty exciting with all the bangings on the door, and you know that nobody can get there except for by boat. And if there's a bad storm coming on, nobody's going to dare try to reach the island um, with a boat because it would drown. But let me read, and we can see what actually happens in this next chapter. Um, Keep in mind the setting again. So far, it's on the island, and it's in this old, ratty old shack that has no insulation. It's cold, it's rainy. There's only tattered blankets, nothing for them to eat. Um, so let's see. It was left off, the last chapter actually left off with a pounding on the door. So I wonder who it is. Let's find out. The keeper of the keys. Boom! They knocked again. Dudley jerked awake. "Where's the cannon?" he said stupidly. There was a crash behind them, and Uncle Vernon came skidding into the room. He was he was holding a rifle in his hands. Now they knew what had been in the long, thin package brought with him. "Who's there?" he shouted. "I warn you, I'm armed." There was a pause. Then smash! The door was hit with such a force that it swung clear off its hinges and with a deafening crash landed flat on the floor. A giant of a man was standing in the background in the doorway. His face was almost completely hidden by a long, shaggy mane of hair and wild, tangled beard. But you could make out his eyes glinting like black beetles under all that hair. The giant squeezed his way into the hut, stooping so that his head just brushed the ceiling. He bent down, picked up the door, and fitted it easily back onto its frame. The noise of the storm outside dropped a little. He turned to look at them all. "Can't make us a cup of tea, could ya? It's not been any easy it hasn't been any easy of a journey." He strolled over to the sofa where Dudley sat frozen with fear. "Bridge up, you great lump," said the stranger. Dudley squeaked and ran to hide behind his mother, who was crouching carefully behind Uncle Vernon. "Oh, here's Harry," said the giant. Harry looked up into the fierce, wild, shaggy face and saw that the beetle's eyes were cringed into a smile. "Last time I saw you, you were just only a baby," said the giant. "You'll look a lot like your dad, but you'd got your mom's eyes." Uncle Vernon made a funny rasping noise. "I demand that you leave at once, sir," he said. "You are breaking and entering." "Oh, shut up, Darsley, you're a great prune," said the giant. He reached over the back of the sofa, jerked the gun from Uncle Vernon's hands, bent it into a knot as easily as if it had been made of rubber, and threw it into the corner of the room. Uncle Vernon made another funny noise, like a mouse being trotted on. "Away, Harry," said the giant, turning back onto the Darsleys. "A very happy birthday to you. Got summer for you here. I might have sat on it at some point, but it tastes all right." From an inside pocket, the black overcoat, he pulled a slightly smashed box. Harry opened it with trembling fingers. Inside it was a large, sticky chocolate cake with "Happy Birthday." Having writ, Harry, uh, "Happy Birthday, Harry" written on it in green icing. Harry looked up at the giant. He meant to say thank you, but the words just got lost on the way into his mouth, and what he said instead was, "Who are you?" The giant chuckled. "True, I haven't introduced myself. Rubikus Hagrid, keeper of the keys and grounds of Hogwarts." He held out an enormous hand and shook Harry's whole arm. "What about that tea, then, huh?" he said, rubbing his hands together. "I'm not sure no to summit stronger if you got a mind." His eyes fell to the empty crate with the shattered chips bag, shriveled chip bags in it, and snorted. He bent down over the fireplace, then couldn't see what they couldn't see what he was doing, but when he drew back a second later, there was a roaring fire there. It filled the whole damp hut into flickering lights, and Harry felt the warmth wash over him as though he'd sunk into a hot tub. The giant sat back down on the sofa, which sagged under his weight, and began taking all sorts of things out of his pockets of a coat: a copper kettle, a squashy bag of sausages, a poker, a teapot, several chipped mugs, and a bottle of some amber liquor that he took a swig from before starting to make tea. Soon the hut was filled with sounds and smells of sizzling sausage. Nobody said a single thing while the giant was working, but as he slid the first 6 feet, ju- the six juicy, slightly burnt sausages from the poker, Dudley, frigided a little. Uncle Vernon said sharply, "Don't touch anything he gives you, Dudley." The giant chuckled. Um, "Your great pudding of a son done needs fattening up any more, Darsleys. Don't worry." He passed the sausage to Harry, who was so hungry he had never tasted anything so wonderful, but he still couldn't take his eyes off the giant. Finally, as nobody seemed about to explain anything to him, "I'm sorry, but I still don't really know who you are." The giant took a gulp of tea and wiped his mouth with his back of his hand. "Call me Haggard," he said. "Everyone does. And like I told you, I'm the keeper of the keys at Hogwarts. You'll know all about Hogwarts, of course." No," said Harry. Um, Hagrid looked shocked. "Sorry," Harry said quickly. "Sorry," barked Hagrid, Hayward, turning to stare at the Dursleys, who shrunk back into the shadows. "It's them as should be sorry. I knew you weren't going to um, get in your letters, but I never thought such you wouldn't ever know about Hogwarts for crying out loud. Did you never wonder where your parents learned it all? All what? Said Harry. All what? What? Um, Hagrid thundered. Now wait just a second. He had leaped to his feet. In his anger, he seemed to fill the whole hut. But Darcy's were cowering against the wall. Do you mean to tell me, he growled at the Dursleys, that this boy knows nothing about anything? Harry thought this was going a bit far. He had been to school, after all, and his marks weren't bad. I know some things, he said. I can, I can, do math and stuff. But Hagrid simply waved his hand and said, about our world. I mean, your world, my world, your parents' world. What world? Hagrid looked as if he was about to explode. Darsley, he shouted. Uncle Vernon, who had gone very pale, whispered something that sounded like Mizzle Wizble. Hagrid stared wildly at Harry. But you must know about your mom and dad, he said. I mean, they're famous. You're famous. What? My mom and dad weren't famous, were they? Yeah, don't know. You don't know? You don't know? Hagrid ran his fingers through his hair, fixing Harry with a bewildered stare. You don't know what you are? He said finally. Uncle Vernon suddenly found his voice. Stop, he commanded. Stop right there, sir. I forbid you to tell the boy anything. A braver man than Vernon Darcy would have quibbled under the furious look Hagrid now gave him. When Hagrid spoke, his every syllable trembled with rage. You never told him what was in the letter uh, Dumbledore left for him. I was there. I saw Dumbledore leave it. Darcy, and you kept it from him all these years? Kept what from me? Harry eagerly. Stop! I forbid you! Yelled Uncle Vernon in panic. Aunt Petunia gave a gasp of horror. Oh, go boil your heads, both of you, said Hagrid. Harry, you're a wizard. There was silence inside the hut. Only the sea and the whistling wind could be heard. I'm a what? Gasped Harry. A wizard, of course, said Hagrid, uh, sitting down on the sofa with groaned and sank even lower. Uh, and a thumping good one. I say, once you've been trained up a bit. With a mom and a dad like yours, what else would you be? And I'm reckoning it's about time you read your letter. Harry stretched out his hand um, at last to take the yellowish envelope addressed in emerald green, to to Mr. H. Potter, the floor, hut on the rock, the sea. He pulled out the letter and read, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster Albus Dumbledore. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted into Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, um, Mervis Manigal, Deputy Headmaster. Questions exploded inside Harry's head like fireworks, and he couldn't decide which to ask first. After a few minutes, he He stammered. What does it mean? You await my owl. Gelpling Jehoshaphat, what that reminds me, said Hagward, clapping a hand to his forehead with enough force to knock over a cart horse. And from yet another pocket inside his overcoat, he pulled an owl, a real live, ruffled, fluffled looking owl, a long quill, and a roll of parchment. With his tongue between his teeth, he scribbled a note that Harry could read upside down. Dear Professor Dumbledore, give Harry his letter, taking him to buy his things tomorrow. Weather horrible, hoping you're well, Hagrid. Hagar rolled up the note, gave it to the owl, which clapped it into his beak and went to the door, and threw the owl out into the storm. When he came back and sat down, as though this was as normal as talking on the telephone, Harry realized his mouth was open and closed it quickly. Where was I? Said Hagrid. But at that moment, Uncle Vernon, still ash-faced but looking very angry, moved into the firelight. You're not going, he said. Hagrid grunted. I'd like to see a great Mongol like you stop me, he said. A what? Said Harry, interested. A Mongol, said Hagrid. It's what we call non-magical folk like them. And it's your bad luck that you grew up in a family of the biggest Muggles I've ever laid eyes on. We swore when we took him in that we'd put a stop to this rubbish, said Uncle Vernon. Swear would stamp it out of him. Wizard indeed. You knew, said Harry. You knew I was a wizard? Knew, shrieked Aunt Petunia suddenly. Knew, of course we knew. How could you not be? My dratted sister being that what she was. Oh, she got a letter just like that and disappeared off to that school and came home every vacation with her pockets full of frog spawn, turning teacups into rats. I was the only one who saw her for what she was, a freak. But for my mother and father who not know it was Lily this and Lily that, they were proud of her being the witch in the family. She stopped to draw in a deep breath and then went ranting on. It seemed that they'd been wanting to say all this for years. Then she met that Potter at school, and they left and got married and had you. And of course, I knew you'd be just the same, just as strange, just as abnormal. And then, if you please, she went on and got herself blown up and we got landed with you. Harry had gone very white. As soon as he had found his voice, he said, blown up? You told me they were in a car crash. Car crash? Roared Hagrid, jumping up so angry that the Dursleys scrambled back into the corner. How could a car crash kill Lily and James Potter? It's outrageous, a scandal. Harry Potter not known his own story when every kid in our world knows his name. But why? What happened? Harry said eagerly. The anger faded from Hagrid's face. He looked suddenly anxious. I never expected this, he said in a low, worried voice. I had no idea that Dumbledore told me there might be a trouble getting hold of you. How much do you know? Oh, Harry, I don't know if I'm the right person to tell you, but someone's got to. You can't go off to Hogwarts not knowing. He threw a dirty look at the Dursleys. Well, it's best you know as much as I can tell you. Mind, I can't tell you everything. It's a great mystery. Parts of it is. He sat down and stared into the fire for a few minutes, and then said, "It begins, I suppose, with a person called, but it's incredible you don't know his name. Everybody in the world knows." Who? Well, I've been saying the name if I've not been saying the name if I can help it. No one does. Why not? Gulping Jehoshaphat. Harry, people are still scared. This is difficult. See there is this wizard who went bad as you can go. Worse than that. His name was Hagrid gulped, but no words came out. Could you write it down? Harry suggested. Nah, can't spell it. All right. Voldemort, Hagrid shuddered. Don't make me say it again. Anyway, this wizard, about 20 years ago now, started looking for followers. Got 'em too. Some were afraid. Some just wanted a bit of his power, 'cause he was getting himself powers all right. Dark days, Harry. Didn't know who to trust. Didn't dare get friendly with strange wizards or witches. Terrible things happened. He was taking over because someone stood up to him, and he killed them horribly. One of the only safe places left was Hogwarts. Reckon Dumbledore's the only one you know who was afraid of. Didn't dare to take on the school, not just then anyway. Now you mom and dad were a good witch and wizard as I've ever known. Head boy and girl at Hogwarts in their day. Suppose the mystery is why you know who never tried to get them on his side before. Probably knew they were too close to Dumbledore to want anything to do with the dark side. Maybe he thought he could persuade them. Maybe he just wanted them out of the way. All anyone knows is they turned up in the village where you was all living in Halloween 10 years ago. On Halloween 10 years ago. You were just a year old. He came to your house and Hagrid suddenly pulled out a very dirty spotted handkerchief and blew his nose with the sound of a foghorn. Sorry, he said, but it's that sad. Knew your mom and dad, and no nicer people I could find anywhere. You know who killed them, and this is the real mystery of all things. He tried to kill you too. Wanted to make a clean job of it, I suppose. Or maybe he just liked killing them by then, but he couldn't do it. Never wondered how you got that mark on your forehead? There was no ordinary cut. That's what you got when a powerful evil curse touches you. Take care of your mom and dad and your house and even, but it didn't work on you. That's why you're famous, Harry. No one ever lived after he decided to kill him. No one except you. And he killed some of the best wizards and witches of the age. The McKennans and the Bones and the Prewetts, and you was only a baby, and you lived. Something very painful was on in Harry's mind. As Hogwarts story came to close, he saw again the blinding flash of green light, more clearly than he had ever remembered it before. And he remembered something else. For the first time in his life, a high, cold, cruel laugh. Hagrid was watching him sadly. Took you for a weird house myself, on Dumbledore's orders. Brought you to this lot load of old tush, said Uncle Vernon. Harry jumped. He had almost forgotten that the Darcys were there. Uncle Vernon certainly seemed to have gone back to his got have gotten back his courage. He was he was glaring at Hagrid, and his fists were clenched. Now you listen here, boy, he snarled. I accept there's something strange about you. Probably nothing a good beating wouldn't have cured. And for all this about your parents, well, they were weirdos, no denying it, and the world's better off without them, in my opinion. As for all they got, getting mixed up with those wizards types, just what I expected, what always knew they'd come to a, to a sticky end. But at that moment, Hagrid leaped from the couch and drew a battered pink umbrella from inside his coat, pointing it at Uncle Vernon like a sword, and said, I'm warning you, Darsley. I'm warning you. One more word. In danger of being speared at the end of the umbrella by a bearded giant, Uncle Vernon's courage failed again. He flattened himself against the wall and fell silent. That's better, said Hagrid, um, breathing heavily and sitting back on the sofa, which this time sagged right down to the floor. Harry, meanwhile, still had questions to ask, hundreds of them. But what happened to that? Sorry, I mean, you know who? Good question, Harry. Disappeared, vanished. Same night he tried to kill you. Makes you even more famous. That's the biggest mystery, see? He was getting more and more powerful. Why did he go? Some say he died. Codswapple, in my opinion. Don't know if don't know if he had enough human left in him to die. Some say he's still out there, biding his time, but I don't believe it. People who was on his side back came back to ours. Some of them came out of kind of stresses. Don't reckon they couldn't have done it without him. Most of us reckon he's still out there somewhere, but lost his powers, too weak to carry on. 'Cause something about you finished him, Harry. There was something going on that night he hadn't counted on. I don't know what it was. No one does. But some things about you stumped him, all right. Hagrid looked at Harry with the warmest and respect blazing in his eyes, but Harry, instead of feeling pleased and proud, felt su- um, felt quite sure there was a horrible mistake. A wizard? Him? How could he possibly be? He spent his life being clouded by Dudley, and his bullied by Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon. If he was really a wizard, why hadn't they been run, turned into warty toads every time they tried to lock him into the cupboard? If he once defeated the giant sorcerer in the world, how could Dudley had always been able to kick him around like a football? Hagrid, he said quickly, I think you must have made a mistake. I don't think that I'm a wizard. To his surprise, Hagrid chuckled. Not a wizard. You never make things happen when you were scared or angry. Harry looked into the fire. Now he came to think about it. Every odd thing that had ever made his aunt and uncle furious with him had happened when he, Harry, had been upset and angry. Chased by Dudley's gang, he somehow found himself out of their reach, dreading going to school with that ridiculous haircut. He'd managed to make his hair grow back. And the very last time Dudley had hit him, had he gotten his revenge without even realizing he was doing it? Hadn't he set the boa constrictor on him? Harry looked back at Hagrid, smiling, and saw that Hagrid was positively beaming at him. See, said Hagrid, Harry Potter's not a wizard. You wait. You'll be right famous at Hogwarts. But Uncle Vernon wasn't going to give in without a fight. Haven't I told you he's not going? He hissed. He's going to Stonewall High, and he'll be grateful for it. I've read those letters, and he needs all sorts of rubbish spell books and wands. And if he wants to go to a muggle like you, wouldn't be able to stop him, growled Hagrid. Stop Lily and James Porter's son from going to Hogwarts? You're mad. His name's been down ever since he's been born. He's off to the finest school in witchcraft and wizardry in the world. 7 years there, and he won't know himself. He'll be with youngsters of his own sort for a change, and he'll be under the greatest headmaster Hogwarts had ever seen, Albus Dumbledore. I'm not paying for some crackpot old fool to teach him to make magic tricks, yelled Uncle Vernon. But he had finally gone too far. Hagrid, seized his umbrella and whirled it over his head. Never, he thundered, insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me. He brought the umbrella swishing down through the air to point at Dudley. There is a flash of violet light, a sound like a firecracker, a sharp squeal, and the next second Dudley was dancing on the spot with his hands clasped over his fat belly, howling in pain. Then he turned his back on them. Harry saw a curly pig's tail poking through the hole in his trousers. Uncle Vernon roared, pulling Aunt Petunia and Dudley into another room. He cast one last terrified look at Hagrid and slammed the door behind them. Hagrid looked down at his umbrella and shook his head. Shouldn't have lost my temper, he said, ruefully. But it doesn't work anyway. Meant to turn him into a pig. But I suppose he was so much like a pig anyways. There wasn't much left to do. He cast a sideways look at Harry under his bushy eyebrows. Be careful if you don't mention that to anyone at Hogwarts, he said. I'm not supposed to do magic. Strictly speaking, I was allowed to do a little bit, follow you up and get your letters to you and stuff. One of the reasons I was keen for this job. Why aren't you supposed to do magic? Oh well, I was at Hogwarts myself, but I got expelled. To tell you the truth, in my third year, they snapped me hard. They snapped my wand in half for everything but Dumbledore let me stay on as gamekeeper. Great man, Dumbledore. Why were you expelled? It's kind of late, and we've got a lot to do tomorrow," said Hagrid loudly. "Got to get back to town. Get all your books and all that." He took off his thick black coat and at threw it to Harry. "You can nip under that," he said. "Don't mind if it wrinkles a bit. I think I still got a couple of dormances in one of the pockets." Wow. So now we got to meet Hagrid. Hagrid, he's quite the guy, the giant. Well, we got to know him a little bit more, I should say, in this chapter. And obviously, this is where Harry goes off to Hogwarts. Um, I'll be back to read you chapter 5, and we can see what the story takes us from there.